challenges across that entire organization. I think we've heard from two outstanding leaders of some of the challenges that we have. I will tell you that Dave often talks to me about, and we do have robust conversations, by the way. It might surprise you that we also talk about family, friends. Occasionally, he'll buy me dinner. I mean, very rarely. I don't know if you've ever been out with him. But we do talk about the organization. We usually end the evening talking about the agency's challenges, and you know, this is me if you know me, a million different solutions in the way to get things solved. And that, to me, is the energy of collaboration, is how can we look for different solutions in innovative ways. As Polly mentioned, we have our own 3D printers. We're looking at how do we develop some of this technology so that we can support the NAS better than we did yesterday. If you don't know me, I'm the Vice President for Technical Operations. If you've seen some of my goofy videos, I run around the National Mall. Charles has agreed to run around with me and do one later this week. Thank you, Charles. I've been in tech ops for most of my career. As Dave mentioned, longtime friend and member of PASS. What you don't know is that I actually started my leadership career as a PASS rep. You know, maybe like many of you, I saw an opportunity for change and a need for that, a need for engagement within our local team, within the service area. And so it's fitting with the song, Van Halen's Jump, I jumped in. Maybe a lot of you jumped in wanting to make a difference. So I did. And that began my leadership career within technical operations. And I spent most of my career within tech ops. As Dave mentioned, I went on to work with air traffic and also with system operations. Those two experiences, coupled with my experience with PASS, have tempered how I look at things. No longer can we be a single point of failure or success. We have to work together. We have to consider the other service units, educate them about who we are and what we do. No longer, in my career coming up in the organization, Tech Ops was, maybe some of you have heard this, Tech Ops was known as the silent service. We are behind the scenes, we get work done. I think it's time for us to change that. Through the communication mechanisms that Dave mentioned, thank you. I think through some of the communication methods that Dave has talked about earlier, the visibility of PASS, what we represent, how the mission, how complex is our mission? Anybody knows, I was thinking about this today, actually yesterday, you know, and Polly mentioned it a little bit. Most of the flying public probably don't realize the breadth of work that this body represents. We design, build, maintain, protect, support the National Airspace System. Most people think that, you know, we're the technicians. But as was mentioned earlier, we have the BIL, we have fins, we have new technology. None of that happens without our workforce. And I think it's time that we start sharing that and be more visible about our role in safety. So look forward to seeing more of that. Maybe you'll catch some videos of Dave and I talking about who we are and what we're doing. Well, I certainly don't want to do a video like you did for us. It might have been a little bombastic. Just kidding. You know, if you know me, you know that, and I'll get to, they've asked me coming in if I was open to questions. Certainly, if you know me, you know that I'm open to answering any questions, digging into some of the issues. Dave tries to keep me at, what'd you say, 30,000 feet? I'm more a below 500 guy. So we can dive into a lot of issues. I thought a lot about, you know, coming here, what do we talk about? What do you want to hear about? I know there's some key issues. But for me, and it's always been this way for me, and I believe the same with Dave and many of you, it's about the who. It's about the relationship. I believe in establishing a strong relationship of trust and building upon that. So I thought of Dave. And I thought about what does Dave mean to me? And those of you that have worked with Dave a long time, you know that one, context is important to Dave. He needs to understand and be able to communicate, how do we get to where we are? Now for me, I tell Dave I don't care about context. I don't need to know, let's just jump, let's go. But Dave puts the framework of context. Where have we been? He's also very astute about the current situation. And when I say that, he assesses, Here's where we are today. Here's the potential impacts if we don't do anything about it. And that's most of our time is spent in those discussions. Here's why change is needed. Here's why we need to do this. The last thing about Dave, and this frames really my discussion today, the last thing with Dave is he's always looking forward. I love the motto, forging the future. He's always looking forward, not today. What does this change mean 5 years from now? A lot of this is going on within the current contract negotiations with the ATO, with technical operations, and it's always forward-leaning. So I appreciate that sincerely. We have to look forward and change. Now, I would say to all of you, thank you for your service, both the military and, as Polly mentioned, a public servant, a civil servant. Most people don't realize outside of this room, we all took an oath to be a civil servant, very similar to that we did in those of us that served in the military. It's an oath to defend the Constitution and this country. And I think you do a fantastic job, as was mentioned, 365 days a year. Often a lot of you are in 24/7 operations. What people don't know, how many people are from Western Service here? Can I see a show of hands? Oh, good, represented well. Big shout out to you and the team. We also deal with natural disasters. So if you've been following Hurricane Hillary, not only did Western do a fantastic job preparing for that and the potential impacts in the West Coast, they had an earthquake, they've got fires, both in Hawaii and the Gray Fire that's going on in Spokane. We're responsible for all of that, and our teams do a great job, and not only protecting the NAS, but each other. So big shout out to the team, big shout out to the CECOMs, and your engagement in the public and personal safety aspect of the NAS. Certainly appreciate it. So I'd like to, if it's okay with you, Dave, is talk about where we've been, very specifically on some topics. I will yield time for questions, be conscious of that. But I want to talk about where we've been. And so it's fitting that you say, when I took the position of the vice president, it was where I want to begin. So imagine being selected. This is my dream job. You know, to come back to Tech Ops and be the vice president was really a pinnacle of my career. I'm like, oh, this is great. So I come back in December of 18. What happened in December of 18? We had an extended government shutdown. What you don't know is that, or you may know, some of you may know, we were really in poor relations with PASS. There had been a lot of breakdown of communications. There had been actually a declaration of sorts that we would not collaborate together. So I'm coming into the extended government shutdown. Obviously impacted a lot of people. Relationships were poor. So I could have used a friend, but here I was, nobody in the building because of the shutdown, similar to what followed, which was the pandemic. We had a significant decline after the pandemic of traffic. We had to pivot the entire organization because there was a lot of unknowns. Again, big thank you to our safety professionals that helped us navigate what the pandemic meant as far as personal safety and some of the procedures. I know there'll be a lot of groaning in this room when I talk about all of the JCAT calls, all of the midnight calls. Anybody a big fan of those? Boo, I know, boo. We learned through those, but that was setting the stage of where we've been. So if you know me, you know that I always look for the positive. You know, what can we learn from this? So we saw a decline in operations. We also saw a significant impact to manufacturing, which we're still experiencing today. A lot of companies closed. A lot of businesses that we depended on to develop our parts for the systems like the ASDs stopped making parts. It wasn't worth their while. So we're still facing some of those challenges. We developed the facility cleaning and contact tracing. You know, at the time, the science said for us to do this. I stepped into that knowing that our team could come up with a solution that would work. Now, you may argue that, well, I won't even argue with you, that it was painful. It was very disruptive to the workforce, and we largely, carried that load for the entire agency. How do we do this? How do we execute this? How do we do it safely? And learn more about the pandemic and COVID. What you may or may not know is that we avoided, because of you, we have avoided, and I looked this up today as far back as I could look that we were recording this, because of our procedures and the way that we developed our contingencies, we avoided 2,700 unscheduled ATC zeros. And for those of you that don't know, ATC zeros are something from a technician's perspective, that's not going to happen. That's our whole job, is to avoid, with ORM, to avoid unscheduled operation or loss of service from a facility. We had 2,700 of those. I think you should take a moment to applaud yourselves, because that doesn't get the attention it deserves. That avoided impacts to our users at a time when they significantly needed to be able to fly. That supported emergency flights and care flights to take care of the whole country. Those are things that those activities supported that were kind of behind the scenes that we definitely need to share and say, this is what our workforce can do. This is how we pivoted. We also, and this is a little bit of a, I know as a sore point at this point, we also introduced telework for technicians. Now, I can tell you that as an executive or as a technician when I started the organization, I never even considered telework. It wasn't a thing. Never even asked. But faced with the pandemic, we knew we had to do something, and we trusted the organization to do it and continue the mission. So we went to telework for technicians, and we're still working through a lot of that. Some is frustrating with what that looks like for the future. But I believe if we're smart about using technology and we're smart about how we do maintenance and our approach to it, we can maintain a lot of those flexibilities so that if you're a technician or an inspector or anybody else, there is portable work available that can be done within those flexibilities while still accomplish your mission in person. I agree with the administrator. This needs to be a balanced approach, and there is not a one-size-fits-all. You've proven that over the last couple of years, and I hope that we'll work together to define what it looks like for the future. I would also share where we've been. During the pandemic, we developed remote technology, en route communications monitoring. We did a lot of work with predictive analysis and investment in the maintenance program, and we actually had to walk some of that back. We were doing a lot of things remotely that, as the world environment changes, started representing some cyber threats. So we've adjusted that, but we're still not giving up with the remote technology and the way forward. I think it was mentioned today, we also have new communications tools. I would love to be out traveling, visiting every single person. Would love to do that. I'm sure Dave would too. Love to be in a car with Mike Perrone driving around the country somewhere. Even today, Mike. But that's not possible, especially during the pandemic. So we leverage those tools. We have held meetings, all hands, webinars, tech forums for the entire country. I've literally been on webinars with over 2,000 of you. We would have never done that without that technology. I do not want to lose that, but we need to do a balance between the in-person meetings. I can't imagine, could you imagine me doing this virtually? This is important for us to have the connections, be in the hallway, make those personal relationships, so we have to find a balance. Lastly, where we've been, I would agree the training needs to be adjusted. We did a lot of adjusting the technical training in the academy. We're still looking for, I would say we're not done. We converted some traditional courses so that it could be accomplished virtually. You've helped us walk those back because you've given us the feedback as you don't want to see a spectrum analyzer and not be able to turn it and understand how it works virtually. But I would say we're not done looking at virtual options. We will be collaborating with you on what heads-up displays look like. There's some virtual 3D technology, and I intend to continue partnering with the military, as we did at Pensacola and the Navy, to look for other alternatives for you to travel to Pensacola, Biloxi, some of the same places that do the same training that we do today. We have to look for alternatives so it's not one spot, one time, and at a slow pace. That's where we've been. Now I'll dive through some of the where we are today, and then I really want to get to where I think we're going, which I think will generate some interest and maybe some questions. Dave may not like this, because we do have robust conversations about what collaboration looks like. In fact, he may, I'm open to it, we don't have a shared definition of collaboration. That's one, right? We need to both be speaking the same language when we say collaborate. I tend to be a little bit more open in my definition and think that everything is collaboration, but the reality is that's not true. We need to be on a common ground of what collaboration is. It can't be that, hey, I asked Dave, you want to be involved in this thing? After we're already been involved in it. And we have several examples of that we'll talk about today, where that happened. But I do believe that we have restarted collaboration from where I started my career as a vice president. I have never seen so much engagement. Let's not call it collaboration yet, but I have never seen so much engagement with such critical initiatives in the ATO and the agency than I have now under Carlos and Dave's leadership. There's more Article 13 reps and agreements and collaborative work groups established. So I think that's first for me. The relationships are starting to build, and I think we're starting to build trust across the organization. We're not there yet, by any means. We also have new tools to accomplish the mission. If you've been to our website, the TechOps website, you'll see our strategic plan. I would encourage you all to go there. We have new tools. We have drones. We just completed a extensive analysis of the use of drones for technical operations. There's a lot of case studies in there. I'd encourage you to read it. That's the baseline for us. We know what we can use drones for to do our work. A lot of these things like this disaster recovery. We could send drones in and take a look at that versus sending people in and putting them in harm's way. We're looking at that. Monitoring and sensors. Years ago, sensors used to cost thousands of dollars. Now they cost dollars. And the technology is there that we can put these sensors in, and we've been testing them for environmental systems where you will get an early warning that something's about to break versus getting called out at 120 degrees and being asked to fix the HVACs. I think that's the path for us, and we've been doing analysis on that. We have been looking at a new approach to maintaining the NAS, increased teaming, workplace flexibilities. You know it as camps. More than open to discussing what that looks like in the future. We've defined workplace plan for TechOps hiring, so I know hiring is also near and dear to you. We have partnered with PASS. Is Davies here? Where are you? Hey, Davies. So, you don't know what you don't know, and for a long time in this organization, we've been doing things the same way. Our recruitment was done the same way. Our outreach was done the same way. We were netting the same results. We were not doing things differently to increase the demographics, the DEIA of our organization. Davies has been a tremendous help working with us to make sure the face of this organization is at those jobs fairs, that we are outreach to those underserved communities that we serve so well, that we are engaging with them and building the relationships that we need to ensure the success of this organization. This is more about I skipped to where we're headed. I got a couple more things about where we are. I'm excited about the workforce plan, by the way, so I'll mention that. TAP, most of the technicians are familiar with TAP. Your feedback is helping us enhance that and get better at that. Call wait times, OCC to SOC transition, let's talk about that. I would call that a failed strategy, and I will acknowledge that. But remember what I said when I opened. I'm a very positive, optimistic person. I always look at things as the glass half full. I think out of this frustration, and I would say in my career I've not had that level of frustration in the performance of our duties, such with this OCC to SOC transition, as we are right now. But out of that and our engagement with PASS, Dave and I are starting to hear alternative approaches to what was originally planned some 6-7 years ago. And to me, that is the value of collaboration and partnership, because some of the ideas that are being shared completely different than what we thought. And you have my commitment that when we're done with these pilots and evaluations, if it's not going to work, we're not going to do it, if we're not in agreement. I didn't know I was going to be so long-winded. You did? You planned for that, didn't you? That's why you gave me 30 minutes. You know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Doug Lowe. Doug, where are you sitting? Thank you, Doug. Where we are on the workforce plan and staffing largely is attributed to Doug Lowe. I've never met anybody other than Dave so tenacious and persistent, I would even say dogged, about refining and helping us understand the staffing and requirements that have long been established in the technical staffing model. Doug has challenged that. I think Dave has taken it to the next level, what that looks like for the workforce. So I appreciate that. Sorry. And, you know, it's not been without, sorry. Now I got a challenge, I got to find my code. Oh, good, thank God. It's not been without difficulties and disagreements. That's not what collaboration is, right? We don't have to agree. Dave and I don't always agree about the strategy, but it is about the common interest and focus, and workforce plan is one of those things that is definitely something that we want to focus on. Camps I mentioned, we'll talk about that. We're underway with that. I think we have an MOU with PASS about evaluating that for us. Gateways intern program, again, Davies, big round of applause, I would say, again for you. If you're not familiar with the Gateways program, you should connect with Davies and talk about it. In my career, we've had interns, but we've never had a program like this. We've had upward mobility programs, we've had co-ops, we've done things like that. Most of those have gone by the wayside. The acting Deputy Administrator Brad Mims sponsored us to take a look at this. In fact, they even asked us, how do we develop a on-the-job training program, an apprenticeship for tech ops? And so we took that charge. We were like, okay, that would be great. And we've established this Gateways program that is pretty dang close to being an apprenticeship program for our interns. They come in, they're hired from schools. We did a great outreach. Davies, I think we did a great job. We've got, I think, 70 offers. We'll have over 55 on board by the end of this fiscal year, and we're looking to repeat that or more next year. So why is that important? We can't keep following the same path to hiring as we've done before. We do have, and I'll talk to them about where we're headed, we do have plans to do VRA off the street and other mechanisms such as a national announcement, but we can't afford, the military is having the same problem we are. They're not getting folks to join. That's been technically a lot of our hires with that experience directly from the military. They're also suffering. So I'm extremely excited about the Gateways program and the pipeline that will establish for the future. Just some stats for you for FY23, because we always get a lot of, we're not hiring. We're not hiring enough, I would argue that. For FY23, we hired almost 500 technicians. We had, like I mentioned, we had 200 applicants for the Gateways program, 70 offers, 58 on board by the end of this fiscal year. Polly mentioned the bill funding and collaborative work group that Dave and others are involved in. So I don't want to understate the significance of that. We typically build 1, maybe 3 towers a year if we're lucky. We're going to be building 30 by 2030. Now that's the one piece. How the work gets done, we're defining how that work gets done. And it may influence the workforce plan, the series, how we hire, who does the work. We have to all collaborate to get that done because it's a tremendous amount of work coming. In addition to the infrastructure work that $5 billion is also supporting with replacing power, shelters, other aging infrastructure. You know that we have a lot of that across the NAS. You're going to start seeing this the end of this year into next. It has taken us a year to get the planning and scheduling and getting the work coordinated so that we can start executing. You're going to see, if you haven't already, you're going to start seeing an increase of work and projects. The trick is, how do we define how that gets done when we're fast trying to hire people to get them at the skill level that we need? I think that's going to take a lot of collaboration. I mentioned FENS. I think Polly mentioned that as well. If you're not familiar with FENS, it's the FAA's network, enterprise network system. Anybody familiar with FTI? Okay, great. FENS will, so if you are, you're familiar, FTI was touted as the backbone of technology, and it was. But it was a TDM service. That means copper, that means traditional telephone lines. Fins will replace every single one of those lines. It will touch over 4,400 facilities. And we have a sense of urgency to get that done, because if you're not aware, you'll hear of something called TDM discontinuance. A lot of those mom and pop telephone companies, they're going out of business. There's no money in copper, at least unless you're scrapping it. And they're going out of business. We have partnered with Verizon. Verizon won the contract for fins. We have a pretty aggressive schedule. Right now we will be riding on both networks. What does that mean to us? In a budgetary challenging environment, we're now going to be paying both vendors. So we have an incentive for us to figure out, how do we get the work done? Dave and I are in conversations with the PMO. How can we help? Because the sooner and safer that we can get this work done and convert over to Verizon, the better and cheaper it'll be for us. It will also open up technology for you in the future. I think it was mentioned several times. We have a commercial space operations. We don't play a major role in that, but it is expanding exponentially. I can see major roles for us for new technology to help with that. We've got commercial and GA operations are climbing. And what's important for you to understand, if you're not already aware, they're growing in areas that we didn't predict. So the aviation and commercial aviation's model has changed. They are looking at new locations. They've changed their fleet. If you've been on a plane lately, not a lot of our RJs, you're on the big planes packed in. They've changed their model. They've changed their location. We need to pivot as well to make sure that we can support them. CBA negotiations, I wouldn't say it's going good or bad. It's going. We have a lot of, what? Dave would say it's going bad. But we've TAU'd some of the articles that, in my head, some of the articles that have already been TAU'd will enable technology with some of our vehicles and allow technology for runway safety. And I think that's important for us. And there's a lot of issues. You know, when you put a team together, often they're varied experience levels, and they're diving into things that Dave and I probably wouldn't dive into. And so we have been helping navigate that, and we'll continue to help the team navigate those more substantive issues and help them navigate through the contract. So that's where we are today. I don't want to miss two things, and then I promise I'll go on to where we're headed. We had a significant NOTAM failure. It was the first time since September 11th that we've grounded all planes. Pretty significant. Did any of us cause that? No, but it's indicative of the technology, the aging technology. Some of these systems still use DOS. We have to find a way to advance, and the agency has focused on sustaining the system and also finding us a future solution. It did generate the call to safety. I think you heard that mentioned twice, and I think that's good for us. I think when we think that we have everything figured out and that we're the best we can be in all areas, including aviation safety, that's when we become complacent. And so the call to safety and the increased sensitivity and visual focus on safety is going to drive change, and I think that's good. Last thing, promise, for where we've been. I mentioned that manufacturers have stopped doing parts. They've stopped repairing parts. They basically are telling us, if you want ASDI, buy a new one. We can't fix that part. That's going to call into a few things. What do we do? What is we as a team can we do? There are some things that we're looking at. We typically, Dave may know this, when we commission a system, we typically don't buy the patent. So what happens with that? We have no rights to it. We can't augment it. We can't fix anything. We're handcuffed. We're looking at acquisition strategy to deal with that. We're also looking, and you may be frustrated by this, we're calling it one NAS inventory. What's occurred over the course of my career is that parts are located across the NAS. We just can't afford not to share them. And so we're heavily focused on how do we identify those parts and share them with the highest priority. You'll hear more about that. Hopefully we'll be partnering on that to make sure that we can be successful. I'm going to pivot to where we're headed. And this is the area that you may or may not agree. in my head, in the future, we have a collaborative partnership formed with shared interest. That is my goal, that we don't have to say, hey, invite you to the party late. We're actually brainstorming about collaborative areas that we need to engage in now to improve. We will have new tools to accomplish the mission. I hope that we advance our use of drones. I can't tell you what the mechanism will be for that, but I can tell you that drone use for doing a lot of the work that we do today is my vision, that we use that technology and that you will be engaged in that. Also the sensors. New approach to maintenance in NAS. You know, we have not changed the maintenance program probably since before I joined the agency. Largely, the maintenance program and how we accomplish maintenance has not been changed, leaving most of the responsibility with the technician or that frontline manager. I think it's time for us to envision a different way to do maintenance that still gives you the responsibility for the maintenance of the systems and services, but also gives you built-in flexibilities, helps with operational risk management, and leverages technology, and we can talk about that. We will have a defined workforce plan. Dave has seen to that. So OMB has, actually they're reaching out again with the Ralph language. We will have a defined workforce plan. Now, hopefully this is okay to share this. I think we're in agreement. We'll find out. I think, you know, it's time that we revisit the 21-1 series. I think we need to look at that. It makes sense in some locations. It doesn't make sense for that to be our largest and singular specialty within the NAS. So we are talking about what that looks like. I think the acting administrator mentioned technology and advancements. We have to leverage that, and that may mean different training. That may mean, how many of you went to A+N+? Never used that, did we? Well, now we're moving to an IP network. So now it's for real, and technology will be driven by that. So is that a 21-1 series? Is that a 22-10? Could we afford more wage grades to help with some of the construction work? Those are the conversations that we're having and we'll have with you to help define the future of the workforce. It would be easy to say, yeah, we need this many 21-1s. That's our workforce plan. But we know that, as Dave mentioned in his opening, it takes all of us to support the NAS. CCOMs, support personnel, logistics, analysts, all of those make up the NAS, and we need to make sure that they're incorporated into the workforce plan. So a couple last things for me, and then I'll stop, I promise. We do need to fully implement FENS. We are committed. It's been awarded to a company. We can't turn around. And so we have to find a work. A lot of times these forcing functions and, as I would say, applied anxiety bring about change, and that's going to force us to really sit down and figure out, and Dave has been really persistent about, we want to do this work. It will be a shared responsibility for sure. There's just too much work, but we want to be a part of this FENS and its success. I see that fully implemented in the next 5 years. Bill, like I mentioned, the 30 by 30, it's a lot of work in front of us. PASS has helped define what the buildings will look like and ensure that you are represented, whether that be a PASS office or storage area or workspace. That's all been defined in this building. If you've not seen the video around POW, that's a company that won the contest, I'll make sure that Dave has the link. You should watch it. It's very innovative. You may not like the design, but when you see how they built this and how we can easily expand or collapse these locations, I think you'll be impressed. We will have one NAS inventory and the tools for you to use to take advantage of that. We will continue to take an innovative approach to solving those problems, such as 3D printing. DEIA, we have a long way to go. Where I mentioned some successes, we still don't represent the country and the demographics that we support. We have a long way to go with that. It's going to take these efforts, like with Davies and with Doug, to challenge how we recruit and how we hire and how we develop our workforce. I see that fully realized with our efforts there. And lastly, I would say the new CBA, we will get through this. And it will set the course for us to, as you're forging our future, I completely agree with that. It will set the stage for us to have a different approach to many things. and I'm looking forward to that. So I'm trying to use up all my time, so there's no time for questions. I would say in closing, I'm very proud to be a part of this organization. I started in this organization. It's what I did in the military. I love it every day. We start our day every single day looking at your work at the COO level and down. I think those reports are shared all the way up to the White House, so they know our contributions. So I would say we're a world-class organization, and we deliver our services every day, day in and day out, to meet the demands of the aviation community. But as I mentioned, the aviation community and business is changing. Commercial space, AAM, all of those things. I think what Dave wants is to position us to be there, not to be waiting and going, hey, how do you figure this out, but to be ahead of that. So I'm an avid reader. If you follow me at all on some of the videos, I love reading, love giving out tips. One of my favorite books is by Marshall Goldsmith. It's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And so when I was hearing, anybody read that? When I was listening and seeing Forging Our Future, that's what came to me. What got us here is not going to get us to the future. So we have to look at new ways of doing business. I believe that leadership, whether you're a past rep or a VP of Tech Ops, is the key for our combined collaborative efforts, and that will help get us there. So thank you.